Okay, so I try to keep it really short since we have
Yeah.
and we'll directly straight jump into it. So
Yeah, sure.
to briefly, give you an explanation why we are doing this. So for past 3 4 years, now at Outscal we have been trying to help a lot of uh, people to break into the gaming industry. People are still very ambiguous about building a career in this industry. They still feel that if it's a safe bet or not. So that's what we are
Mm.
trying to solve. And like we have built a community for similar kind of people, either who are trying to enter into the industry or who are already part of the industry but looking for better opportunities.
Mm.
So to just boost their confidence, we have been talking to a lot of founders, a lot of people who have had a good decade-long journey in the industry, and sharing their
Mm.
stories across with the community. So that's
Mm.
this call is again part of the same initiative.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, we can keep it very casual, and I'll start by asking questions back from early 2000s when all of this was just getting started, and you were coming out of your college and um, those days. So we
Mm.
can. I'm going to walk you back to that nostalgic path for a while. So I think it's been more than 25 years already. You graduated from college in 2001.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been around 25 years. Not 25 years, but yeah. And since I've
More
been
than
working,
20 years.
it's been just over 2 decades now. Yeah. But yeah, during college days, there was nothing called as gaming. Uh,
Hmm.
there was no industry called as gaming at that time. Yes, we knew what games were, or rather, I knew what games were because I've been playing games since late 80s.
Hmm.
Um, I think I was one of the fortunate ones to be gifted an Atari by my dad because I scored really good
Oh,
marks in my academics. So that was my reward. And was that I was also one of the fortunate ones to be introduced into the world of PC.
hmm.
Uh, so like early 90s were the were the those were the days when computers or when the PCs started coming into the Indian market.
Hmm.
Um, Majorly for the companies, but even for personal usage, personal computers were
Hmm.
getting introduced. I
Right.
think I think my first computer was an 386. If you know what a
Oh,
386 is, but but yeah, 386, 486, and then the entire line of Pentium ones, twos, three, fours, and whatnot. So I got introduced to the world of like computers also quite early on. I was very fortunate at this. We had a business of printing, and we were one of the very first one to adopt digital printing, or something called as DTP or desktop printing, right?
okay.
So, so my dad was into all that stuff, and I used to just dabble around, see what's happening on the like how the computer looks like,
Hmm.
um, and majorly the basic attraction always is games, right? As a kid, so what are kind of games? Yeah, honestly speaking, the very first PC game that I ever played uh, was Solitaire on Windows 3.1. So,
Oh,
yeah. But then there were other really good DOS games at that time. I will not even name games like like Dave and Prince of Persia because everyone knows
Prince of
about that. But
Persia.
then,
Hmm.
there was this Formula One game called as Accolade Grand Prix by this company called as Interpros. Right.
Okay.
So I got introduced to that game first, and then the rest of the games followed. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, but I knew what games were because I was already interested in Atari and whatnot. Unfortunately, I never had the option of or the got introduced to the SNES, Super
Hmm.
Nintendo, right? But
Hmm.
but yeah, there were a lot of knockoffs which used to come into India, like Media Game Center and the knockoffs of even Samurai. Oh, sorry, Samurai
Hmm.
was this thing, Super Nintendo knockoff, anyways.
Hmm.
So that's how my journey started into gaming. But then it wasn't. There's nothing called a gaming industry. It was very basic at that time. Like you study, you get into either engineering, medical, or just do bachelors. I pursued bachelors because or the way the BSc because I
Mm.
wanted to get into defense services.
Okay.
That was my sole aim. But
Mm.
then things did not work out. I basically failed a few exams and all, and
Mm.
things were not really happening that way. Like I was not really going to get into it. It was quite crystal clear.
Mm.
So by that time, the new millennium had already started, and um, and a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine at that time, school friend, we opened up a gaming cafe called
Mm.
Point Blank. It was one of the very first ones in Mumbai, also in India, if I'm not wrong.
Mm.
Uh, so instead of internet cafe, we had a gaming cafe. Yeah, it was an
Okay.
entirely new concept and whatnot. Uh, Quite profitable business at that time. Because if you look at gaming cafes right now, of course they are profitable, but then the seeds were laid at the start of the millennium itself.
Mm.
So and also because the gaming wasn't that common even at that time,
Mm.
like especially
Mm.
PC gaming and people who could afford a personal computer, a
Mm.
decent high-end personal computer at that time
Mm.
was quite rare.
Right.
Like imagine having a 32 MB graphic card, yeah, and you were talking about 10 GB, 16 GB, 20, 24 GB graphic cards now. We were talking about 32 MB graphic cards on which Counter Strike, Quake, all these games used to run, right?
Mm.
Um, so so we we were like I wouldn't say we were visionaries, but hey, we wanted to make a quick buck and we wanted to also play games.
Mm.
So and also apart from that, the other thing was esports had already started in India at that time, but at a very small level. Um,
Mm.
and we were like, hey, if you want to play Counter Strike in clans or other, if you want to compete, there is no better place than our own place where if we can actually compete or other we can actually practice, make form a team and then
Mm.
compete.
Mm.
So, so all these ideas were there, and hence we thought, hey, let's come up with a gaming cafe. And
Mm.
then I was there for a year, and then it wasn't much enjoyable for at least for me. And I was like, hey,
Mm.
let's look into seriously into gaming as a career. And the only thing that I could find was there was this company called as India Games, which got it turned into Disney, and then um, uh, which is the sorry, what is like the media company?
Games
Ronnie
to
Screwval
win.
is no, the
Like
Ronnie Screwval.
Universal.
No, it's from you
Data
itself, right?
something.
Wait, check
It's
that.
Universal something.
No, it's not Universal for the sure, but
Okay.
uh, but yeah, that company took over that company. So, and then there was Paradox Studios by Reliance, which is now
Mm.
Paradox became Jump, then Jump became Reliance Games. But Paradox was there, and then there was Dhruva, which was based
Okay.
on Bangalore, right? Which was
Mm.
totally into third party um, art servicing.
It was UTV
Yeah,
software.
UTV, yes, UTV.
Mm.
so, yeah, so India Games was basically my entry point into proper
Mm.
gaming. In fact, there are a lot of veterans in the industry even now who have come from either from Paradox, Dhruva, or from India Games. Um,
Mm.
but
So,
from
so India Games got acquired by UTV or like did it get merged? Like how was it?
I think yeah, it was India Games to UTV to Disney. That's how it was. But I had quit
Okay.
long time before that. All these things
Mm.
happened much later. I
Okay.
was with the company, I guess, for almost 2.5 years or something.
Right till
Uh,
2006.
yeah, 2006. But
Okay.
it was all about mobile gaming at that time. And there were other
Mm.
companies which are doing servicing, like they were doing QA testing, QA service houses for PC console. But that was at a much smaller scale
Mm.
compared to what mobile gaming was and what it was turning into.
Mm.
And again, I would call myself lucky because I was there at the right time, right place, being part of mobile gaming. Today mobile gaming is all about only Android and iOS, but I think we have seen the worst days, like playing games on those button games, right? The J2ME or the Brew games. Sorry, the CDMA handsets was a task. Were really tedious testing, developing games onto it, making art for it, doing game design for it. The entire game development process was super tedious. I'm not saying that it's not tedious even now, but um, with those restrictions and limitations, you had to basically think out of the box, come up with better, innovative ways to develop games, to test games. So, it like when I look back in retrospection, it's all funny the way we used to work and all. Uh, but hey, it was enjoyable experience. It was definitely a wild ride. Since then, people were saying, "Hey, after 5 years, gaming is going to be uh, India is going to be the gaming hub." It took, I think, approximately 12 to 15 years for India to actually become gaming hub
The gaming hub.
since the first time I actually heard it. So it's not even a hub yet, but yeah, if you look at the last decade, 2010 to 2020, there has, especially the last 5 years, 2015 to 2020, there has been a super uptick take in the increase in the way the industry has actually grown. So many companies which have formed, which is an amazing thing to see, right?
Right.
Especially if you've been the one of the older generation. I would call myself an older generation, but I think now finally I feel like that I've proven myself, especially to my parents, because
Okay.
I can tell. Yeah, because getting into gaming at that time also, of course, at that time was much tougher than what you see right now.
Right.
Because when you talk about games, it's all over. Hey, you're just playing games, right? Are you actually going to work with it? No one knows what kind of work actually goes in the background in making
Right.
those entertainment products. So, yeah, it was quite difficult. At least until past few years, my parents were still like under a question, like, what are you doing with your life? And I'm quite old in a way. So, yeah, in the Indian culture, you know very well that parents have a very uh, they have a special position, right? And they have that authority to ask you all these questions, which is a very good thing actually. I don't mind that
Right.
at all. But hey, sometimes it does become. It used to become annoying, but not anymore. Like after I reached a certain time and place in my career, I think after that only my parents were like, okay, beta kuch to kar raha hai.
Like, was that the electronic arts or assistant? Like, जब थोड़ा
No,
कुछ पास हुआ था?
it was much after that also.
Oh,
But my parents did not know what EA was. EA at that time was like uh, on par with what Microsoft and Infosys were for Indians, right? So for gamers, for people like me, electronic arts was their dream job. Yeah. But
right.
how would normal people know about it?
Mm.
People who are not associated with gaming would not understand the importance of electronic arts, uh, or or any kind of big companies that you get associated with, right? Normal people would not
But
know that.
right. Yeah, true that. But okay, so I have a lot of questions in my head already.
Yeah, please.
So
Yeah, sure.
one thing was, so back when you started with this gaming cafe, like what kind of games were there that people used to come, and the target audience was mainly kids, I'm assuming.
No,
Was it
it was primarily college going students.
okay?
Are you from Mumbai by any chance?
No, no, I'm not from Mumbai, but I remember at the same time, I'm basically from Shimla.
Okay.
So at that time, around not in 2004, but ballpark 2006 and 7, I was playing games in PlayStation 2. So there was
Okay.
this cafe nearby my house where we used
Okay.
to play games in PS2.
Okay. So the kind of games that by that time Counter Strike, actually it
Mhm.
was, if I'm not, of course it was not 1.6, it was, I think it was 1.4 or
Uh,
1.5 that we started with.
okay.
And 1.6 came in almost 8 or 9 months down the line. I think it was 2003 itself, but
Okay.
somewhere around November, December of 2003, that's when we got
Mhm.
introduced to 1.6. But otherwise,
Mm.
until then, it was primarily 1.5 itself that we were playing. Actually, not even 1.4,
Mm.
1.5. I personally started with 1.4,
Okay.
but Counter Strike 1.5 was the game to be played. And 1.6 came and changed the entire face of how competitive games were, or other, especially Counter Strike.
Right.
But apart from that, there was Quake 3, which was a much
Mm.
more older game. GTA 3 had already come out by then.
Okay. Mm.
NFS Underground had come out,
Mm.
and Warcraft 3 had come out.
Mm.
So people majorly used to play all these games. Dota was not even in the picture at that time. Dota came in the
Right.
picture probably 3 or 4 years
After
down the
World of
line.
Warcraft.
Yeah,
After
yeah.
World of Warcraft.
Yeah. So it was majorly CS, because CS, if you look at our esports history also. Oh, sorry, there was also Age of Empires, by the way. In terms of
Mm.
strategy, there was Age of Empires, especially two, Warcraft 3. These were the two strategy games. Then there was Age of Wonders also at one point in time. In terms
Mm.
of competitive game, it was Quake and CS, which was ruled
Mm.
by all the gamers. And in terms of single player games, of course, there was NFS Underground, there was GTA, as I mentioned, 3. There was also Prince of Persia, the new
Mm.
ones, the reboot had already started, right?
Right.
So that game also, I think, had already started by then. I'm not sure
Okay.
about Prince of Persia that much, but yeah. And there was also a Red Alert 2, which people used to play quite a lot. So
Got it. And all of these were mainly like people playing on PCs, like they had
yeah,
those
yeah, yeah.
computer
Yeah.
games.
So again, in India at that time, if you were to have a console in the
Mm.
sense, talk about PlayStation 1,
Mm.
or even SNES, or say Samurai or Media, the knockoffs. So even Atari was quite unheard of also at that time. Very
Right.
few people had it. So only the fortunate ones would have that, because it were costly at that time. Like
Mm.
spending 4-5,000 rupees at that time was a huge
Right.
thing for families.
Mm.
And again, PCs also PC. The profit about sorry, the best advantage about a PC was it's a multi-use uh,
Right. Mm. Not
product.
exclusively for games, but
Exactly.
other
You could
things.
do so many things on it, documentation, Excel sheets. If you just wanted to surf, you could surf. You want to watch movies, talk about downloading from Napster and listening music through Winamp and all. So it was a multi-purpose device, which is why there were takers for PC at least.
Mm.
And I think um, at that time, I think around 90s, yeah, because of the government also, there was quite a flux of a push towards modernization, right? So
Mm.
that also helped in growing the PC market. So
Right.
these were the games which people used to end up playing most of the times.
Mm.
And of course, there are other smaller games like Prince, the older Prince or Dave, and all the other games, Earthworm Jim,
Mm.
Commander Keen. There's so many good games, Doom for that matter, or which is the other game by ID, Duke Nukem 3D. Sorry. So all these games were already there. But in terms of
Mm.
getting the crowd together,
Right.
uh, CS, Quake, Warcraft, Age of Empires, NFS, and GTA. They played a huge role.
Mm.
Um,
Got it. Okay. So now come into the part where Electronic Arts after India Games, right? So you exited in 2006 from India Games, and then next was Electronic Arts, I'm assuming, straight from 2006 itself.
yeah,
So, like, I think I'm assuming like these were the early days of Electronic Arts in India as well.
totally. Again, fortunate there to be there at the right time, right place, um, because they were just setting up the company.
Hmm.
Or rather, it was actually the company was called Jamdad, which was one of the topmost mobile gaming companies in the world.
Okay.
And Jamdad had a base in Hyderabad, and
Hmm.
Jamdad got acquired by Electronic Arts, I think in
Okay.
Feb of 2006 only, if I'm not wrong. And it
Hmm.
was a landmark deal. I think it was one of the biggest deals in gaming too, apart from
Okay.
YT. It was like, I think 960 million.
Oh.
Yeah, I think that was the number. You may want to cross check, okay, but that's how EA came into India, right?
Okay.
It was only about mobile games, and most of the work that we used to do was we used to do a lot of porting. You know what porting is?
Porting as in from
Yeah. So
one
so
platform to other.
it was one device to multiple devices. You can platform would is entirely basically from mobile to PC to console. That would be platform, right? But this was the multiple devices. So in those days, if you have probably you must have seen your parents or someone from your family using those handsets, right? So every handset was different.
Okay.
So we used to have a list of best devices. Like say you must have heard about Nokia 6610 or
Right.
some of the Nokia phones or some of the Sony phones, Sony Ericsson phone, the Walkman phones. So we used to, so we used to develop games on those high-end devices first, and then replicate it onto other devices, which may be mid-end or low-end. So that entire process was called porting. So we used to do a lot of porting work in India at that time. So we used to do all kinds of development, like because doing develop like uh, porting a game from a high-end devices to mid-end and to low-end device was a huge task. And now today, with a click of a button, you can do almost 80-90% of porting from PC to console or vice versa. But you could not do the same thing on mobiles. Even in today's day and age on mobile, with iOS and Android, it's still possible. Like especially if you're working on Unity, you can do that kind of porting with just a click of a button. But then you still need developers, you still need artists, you still need designers to make sure that whatever you're doing, you're doing it perfectly. Right. So yeah, I was part of QA at that time. So we used to test a lot of many games. Like there's tested, I don't know. I think I've been associated with more than 50 odd games here at that time itself. So multiple variants of NFS, multiple variants of FIFA, Sims on mobile was super difficult. Sim City, which was one of the first strategy or the city building simulation games on mobile. That also quite difficult. But yeah, so that is what we used to do in that space, so in that company. And over a period of time, because Android and iOS also like the industry changed into Android and iOS, then the company also changed slowly and steadily onto those platforms, right? So those technologies were adapted, and then we used to basically make games even for those platforms.
Oh, okay, got it. So this was again majorly at Electronic Arts, right?
Yeah.
6 years. 6 years is a long time.
Yeah, that was the best time that I ever had.
Okay. And then next was Zynga and you. So
yeah, Zynga was good. Yes, Zynga again a pioneer in the free to play space at that time, especially Facebook gaming. Zynga was more into free to play space, right? And I think they were one of the very first ones who actually introduced this concept to the gaming world.
Right.
Again, free to play, there was a concept of live services even before that. Like if you look at World of Warcraft or any of the MMORPGs, wherein you had to buy the base game and then buy the expansion packs, but then there was in-game trading, in-game buying of cosmetics and all. Yeah. So all these things were already there. So, but the only thing that they did was they did really brilliantly was make the game free and then keep on churning or rather keep on making keep on making content and keep on selling that content to people, right? They were like not only Zynga, but other gaming companies like free to play gaming companies. Like there were Kixeye and there were a few more, which did really well at that time. They understood what the pulse of the market is, and then they invested correctly. So at Zynga, it was more about a free to play game that I was working on. And that was a place where I actually understood where my basics, I started learning the basics of it. So it was enjoyable, fun place to play, be new concepts to learn. Uh,
Got it.
so not much has changed after that. Yeah, there are newer concepts which are coming to free to play business, but then
Hmm.
that's just a matter of
So
adapting.
it was at Electronic Arts, right, where you switched from the QA role to predominantly like production role or
Mm. Yeah,
management role. So and Zynga was like just a step further into purely production.
yeah. So I was also already in management, even in QA.
Hmm.
Um, uh, because I was doing QA, like I was doing testing for a very long time, even prior to that.
Okay.
So when I joined, I was a part of management anyways. But
Right.
then after a certain point, I was like, hey, this was not enjoyable anymore. I wanted to get deeper into um owning projects or owning games, because
Right.
there is this there is this factor of feeling pride, right? That hey, this is my game.
Hmm.
When you play any of the games, and if I do not know whether you wait until all the credits roll out, because I do that even though it's not my game.
Hmm.
It's fun to look at all those things. You see, like so many people are working on a game, and seeing your name out of there is something to feel proud of. And I wanted to have something of that sort on my name. Uh, but then I realized it's not me; it's everyone also.
Right.
So it's fun to be with the like make a game with a team. Anyways, you can't make a game on your own. You need you need some team to
Right.
to work with, right?
Yep.
So it was fun to so it's my focus changed because primarily because I wanted to be much more closer to the games and also have my name associated with any of the games. And
Hmm.
also I felt at that time that that was much more enjoyable than what I was already doing.
Hmm.
So it was a natural transition from
Hmm.
QA to production.
Hmm.
And since I was anyways doing project management prior to that, doing project management even after that was not really that challenging. Um, so only thing is that your scope my scope changed. It was only one domain that I was looking into, but when I got into production, it was multiple domains that I had to look at. So yes, it was a challenge, but not a challenge really. So it was fun though, making sure that hey, that there are certain games that sorry, there are games that you can actually produce or other where you can sit with the designer, sit with the artist, sit with the developer, sit with QA, sit with
Hmm.
marketing to
Hmm.
basically get a game done or executed.
Hmm.
Right?
Hmm.
And one of the very first game that I actually worked on was Need for Speed, which was another dream come true.
Oh,
So
also.
so that was on the first game. So of course, I was partnered with another producer on that. Uh,
Hmm.
but it was an enjoyable, memorable experience.
Hmm.
All the people who worked on it, they were like all kicked about working on NFS because everyone knew what NFS was.
Right.
So that's
Okay.
what.
Understood. So now after Zynga, like you went to Reliance Games, right? Like in any way, did that feel like a step down because then that was like, after coming from EA Zynga, now you're coming to a native company. Uh,
No, not at all. Actually, that would be incorrect to
hmm.
term any company as a step down also because see,
Okay.
and because that is something that people need to realize is these
Hmm.
are just companies, right? There's so
Hmm.
much to learn from each and every company, from all the people that you meet.
Hmm.
Um, going after brands up till a certain time is all okay, but after a
Hmm.
certain point, it's all about work.
Hmm.
So it does not matter if you're. It doesn't matter what name the company has.
Hmm.
It matters what kind of work that you're doing. Is it really fun to work with? Are the people that you're working with are
Hmm.
also great to work with? Is the company also basically taking care of you?
Hmm.
So I've never looked at any companies that I've joined as a step down after EA and
Hmm.
Zynga because I'd learned that long time ago that you should not judge any company or any person
Hmm.
in the first go itself.
Got it.
Yes, I had some notions, but then
Hmm.
those notions were cleared almost immediately. Amazing people in that company too, like from top to bottom. everyone was super talented. See, again, with Indian companies, the the exposure is not much as what the branded American or the multinational companies would give you. But that does not mean that you don't have the skills or the talent.
Hmm.
Right?
Okay.
So I found that that there was no dearth of talent in that company. They have made amazing games
Hmm.
based in India.
Hmm.
So especially even before I joined Reliance Games, they
Hmm.
already had a game in the market called a World WRB, right? World Real Boxing. Um,
Okay.
Probably I maybe just do a fact check on that. It's WRB. So it was based on this uh, Hollywood IP, right?
Hmm.
The Hugh Jackman movie. By the way, today I'm forgetting all names. Sorry. There was Hugh Jackman movie wherein the robots fight. Uh, it's a robot boxing movie. Uh,
Yeah.
so so they had that IP. They had made a premium version of that game, and then they
Hmm.
made a free to play version of that game afterward. Um, so that was much before I joined. So they knew what they were doing there, and they were able to do that only because of skilled, talented people. So saying that only EA or Zynga had skilled or talented people may be wrong.
Hmm.
There's talent in India, and like 1.4 billion people. So
Yep.
uh, yeah. So there is, you just have to look for it and nurture the talent. That's it. Yeah.
Understood. Got it.
So yeah, Reliance
So,
was a good experience.
got it. Okay. So, by now, you've already had like a decade of experience in the industry, like two, three big names to your resume. EA was there, Zynga was there, Reliance Games was there. Like, did you ever feel like going out of India or maybe trying, you know, uh, like working in US, UK, somewhere like where these big companies started from? Ever occurred to you, or maybe offers that came in your way?
It did occur. I did try also, but again, I kept on saying this, right? You have to be fortunate. You have to be right time, right place.
Hmm.
So in this perspective, it never
Hmm.
happened with me. I was not at the right time, right place. So,
Oh,
so
okay.
that was that happened. But I wanted to go out only primarily for the reason because I wanted to learn more. Because
Hmm.
it was a known fact, right? It's still a known fact that in the West or in Europe, especially,
Hmm.
those guys are ahead of us in terms of technology, in terms of the way we
Right.
think. Of
Right.
course, the culture has to play a role, but also we are still in the learning phase, right? In this past 10 years, yes, there are companies which have come with PC and console games, and again, we're looking at companies which are making games which are kind of GTA-ish
Hmm.
versions, right, on mobile and all. So, so we are there, but it's still going to take us some more time. So I was thinking like, hey, let me just go there, let me just experience that,
Exactly. Yeah.
um, because that was a time when I wanted to learn more. My
Hmm.
Because the exposure in India was limited. It was good, but it was still limited. Uh, so only way, uh, only way to get better experience or more exposure was to go out, experience it. But I
Hmm.
always had plans to come back also and start something on my own. So yeah, it did occur. It did not work out. So probably it may work out in the future. I don't mind learning again. So
Yeah.
learning should not stop.
Okay. So again, Reliance Games was at least a big name in India. So like, were your parents sold by 2016, or still it took more time?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm saying Reliance Games was at least a big name in India household. Reliance was at least a big name.
Right.
So were parents still sold by 2016 that what you were doing was the right path, or did it take longer than 2016 for them to understand like how
I
good?
don't think Reliance had any place or other can be credited to making gaming a household name. The
Hmm.
reason for that is actually you can in a way, if you look at it. The reason for the increase in gaming in India was because, first of all, it was only through mobile games rather than PC and console games. And but the reason for that also was because the penetration of mobiles in India was far more, right? Every person was like our um, our incomes had grown to such an extent that most of people in India are able to afford a phone, even though it may be a simple phone, does not matter. And that gave rise to people getting exposed to very basic games first, right? Probably it started all with Candy Crush. That's what I would say. That's my perspective and opinion. It was so easy to play a game like Candy Crush, pick up, play, and then just move on, right? So that definitely helped. Then the era of influencers came into play, right? When people started streaming games, making videos of games on YouTube. We are not on Twitch per se, but yeah, on YouTube at least. And that's when people started, hey, gaming. Uh, People started realizing that gaming is something, right? And then even in terms of esports, in the last decade, especially in the last 5 years, 6 years, the amount of money which has been invested into esports in India has been huge. People are getting lakhs of rupees as prize money. There are crores of rupees as pool money, right? So, and then everything started getting advertised, and people started seeing their kids playing or watching game videos. You can hear people would be like, "Why are you watching people playing games? How silly is that, right?" But hey, that is all the small things actually led to the rise of gaming in India. There's no one particular company or one particular reason for it. They're all small things. Okay, you can't pinpoint on it. This is the reason, right? So, so that's the thing, yeah, Piyush, that there are multiple reasons for the uptick in that. Um, so I think that's right away. Right. Okay.